So Justin Trudeau has officially broken his silence on the entire Nazi debacle, and everything, all of the blame is falling on the House Speaker. Now, the reason why this is such an important talking point is, yes, of course, because a literal fucking Nazi was in Parliament, like red flags, DEFCON 6. What the hell is happening? But above and beyond just that, like superficial, like, clean slate that everyone can agree is completely messed up. Above and beyond that, he was invited personally by the House Speaker. Now, for those who don't understand how Parliament in Canada works, the House Speaker is like the king. He has more parliamentary power and privilege than the Prime Minister of Canada himself on the Parliament grounds in the House of Canada, in this building right here. This guy's sitting in the chair. He's sitting in the king's chair because in this moment, in this context, he kind of is the king. So now you have to ask the question, this begs the question, why is it that the king himself is able to invite somebody as a special guest of the king, let's call a speaker the king for this instance, and this person wasn't vetted? Well, it turns out that they all were vetted, because all invited guests, even if Pierre Poilievre, Michelle Garner, Melissa Lantsman, if Melissa Lantsman or somebody who's lesser known in the Conservative Party of Canada invites Jasper Sunshine, Mr. Sunshine Baby, myself, says, hey man, why don't you come out, stand in the gallery or sit in the gallery and just watch us do the thing, and you can see it live for yourself. I would be vetted because I'm an invited guest. So there's different reasons for people can actually be in Parliament. There is a viewing gallery and anybody can go view it. Any Joe Schmo from the general public can go view it. You, me, our mother, our grandma, our sister, whatever. And you just go through regular kind of airport security. You take your shoes off, you take your hat off, you take your keys off, you put it through the detectors, you stand there like this and they go, and they zap you with the thing or whatever, and it senses metal, and then you can go and you can watch Parliament. You can actually do that here in Canada. That's part of our monarchy system. It's a wonderful thing. But that's not being an invited guest. So you can go do that and you can be a racist, you can be a homophobe. They would never really know. All they would know is your face, your clothes, your ID, but there's no background checks that are done. Invited guests are different, even if it's from like a B person or C person, a back row bench of a federally elected member of Parliament. Even though they're federally elected, there's obviously different levels of importance. If we're looking at the lesser important people of Parliament inviting Mr. Sunshine Baby to come and watch, I would be vetted because I'm a invited guest. I go on a different piece of paper as an invited guest and I sit in a different part of Parliament. Well, the king himself invited somebody. So this is huge. And you kind of have to ask yourself, why is it that the king himself can invite somebody and the government's trying to say, well, we just didn't vet him. We didn't vet anybody. Nobody gets vetted. Anybody can come in. If that's the case, whoa, we need to revisit our security and our way of doing things, because that is extremely, extremely dangerous. It's almost like going through an airport and not showing any ID and not going through security, which is kind of what the government is claiming happened here in Parliament. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Holy crap, that was a big intro. I want to encourage you all to give a like and subscribe if you haven't yet already. This is going to be a jam-packed video. We're taking a look at Justin Trudeau breaking his silence. But before we do, I do want to show everybody the half-ass apology and the half-ass accountability that Anthony Rota is trying to take for this, where he is to blame, of course. He personally invited a Nazi, but the government is also to blame.
I want to make it clear that it was my decision and my decision alone. This was a constituent who wanted to see wanted to be here, and I recognized him. It was my decision, and I apologize profusely. I cannot tell you how regretful it is, and it may not be good enough for some of you, and for that I apologize. And I'll let the Honourable Opposition House Leader take it from here, and then we'll go to the government House Leader.
Right. So it may not be good enough for some of you, and that would be correct. It isn't good enough for everybody. And the only way to take full accountability for your actions is to resign. And so now we're going to look at a series of videos of Justin Trudeau and people breaking their silence on this, saying, well, you know, it was the House Speaker and it's his problem. That's not the case. Again, invited guests, different than you or I showing up on any given day that question period is in and just going through the regular process of going to view question period from the viewing gallery. Very, very different. Separate entrances, separate seating arrangements, separate acknowledgements, separate background checks and vetting process. Yeah, it's not a good look. So here's Justin Trudeau breaking his silence and calling this Russian disinformation. Very bizarre.
I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine, as we did last week with announcing further measures to stand with Ukraine in Russia's illegal war against it. Je pense que c'est clair que c'est inacceptable.
So it's very weird that Trudeau is trying to call this Russian misinformation and Russian disinformation. We have another clip here from CPAC themselves saying, speaking for the first time since Ukrainian Nazi veteran was appalled during these lengthy speech, Trudeau says this is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and by extension to all Canadians, adding this is extremely upsetting that this happened.
Obviously, it's extremely upsetting that this happened.
No shit, buddy.
The Speaker has acknowledged his mistake and has apologized. But this is something that is deeply embarrassing to the Parliament of Canada and by extension to all Canadians. I think particularly of Jewish MPs and all members of the Jewish community across the country who are commemorating Yom Kippur today. I think it's going to be really important that all of us push back against Russian propaganda, Russian disinformation, and continue our steadfast and unequivocal support for Ukraine, as we did last week with announcing further measures to stand.
So I kind of want to pass the question off to you, the viewers. Do you feel like this is Russian misinformation or Russian disinformation? Because this really happened. And the fact that it's getting, complete international headlines, it has nothing to do with propaganda or disinformation. The government of Canada knowingly invited a Nazi into Parliament because he's an invited guest. Again, I'm going to reiterate from the 3-minute intro I did. He's an invited guest from the king himself in Parliament, the House Speaker. So it's very, very, very different than anybody just walking in. I don't know. It's bizarre. And of course, Elon Musk has this to say indirectly. Of course, he won't say that this is about Canada, but the timing is very impeccable, saying watching the Roman Empire collapse again, but with Wi-Fi and memes this time, which couldn't be more accurate. I mean, Canada is crumbling. We have been infiltrated. We have been penetrated by, the Liberal cabinet has been penetrated by Klaus Schwab himself, but also by foreign governments, Chinese election interference. India allegedly just assassinated somebody, even though he was a bad dude. So now you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. Ethics and morals of is this good? Is this bad? Why is Canada allowing this? And now a literal Nazi, one of Hitler's go-to people or squads, who's responsible for probably thousands, hundreds of thousands of different murders, was invited into Parliament. He didn't sneak in. This isn't somebody walking during the Freedom Convoy holding a Nazi flag trying to sabotage it. No. Literally a Nazi invited into Parliament. I can't stress that enough. And Justin Trudeau has the audacity to call truckers and protesters, people waving Canadian flags, Nazis, yet a literal Nazi. It might as well have been Hitler himself making an appearance, being invited into Parliament, and the Canadian government going, well, yeah, we didn't know. Our bad. Come on, guys. Now, CTV and mainstream media is actually flipping on the Liberals and Justin Trudeau, and they want some sort of accountability. Let's take a look at this video here of CTV's political analyst breaking down, should Anthony Rota resign? I answer yes. I would love to know what you guys think before I start the video. Comment down below. Should Anthony Rota, the House Speaker, or as I like to call him, the King of Parliament, should he resign? Yes or no? Let me know down in the comments.
Political commentator Scott Reed for his take here. So, Scott, why not resign amid all of this?
Well, I suspect that he's simply reluctant to do so because it was an honest mistake. I believe that it was an honest mistake. I don't think that anybody would, imagine that Anthony Rota would have willingly and knowingly invited a Nazi to be recognized. It's appalling. It is appalling. It is embarrassing, as Minister Gold said. My honest belief, Todd, and I say this reluctantly because I know Anthony Rota some. I worked with him. I think he's been an outstanding member of Parliament. I think he's been a very fair, very capable Speaker of the House of Commons. But I don't think there's an alternative. I think an apology is inadequate for a mistake of this scale, of this size, this significance. I think with the apology must come accountability, and the only true accountability in a circumstance like this, I think, is that he has to step down. And I don't say that gleefully, but I think I can't think of an alternative to resignation in this situation.
We were talking to our correspondent Judy Trin, Scott, in Ottawa about this story, and obviously it gets worse because the Russians have been pushing for such a long time this whole narrative about Ukraine being controlled by Nazis, which of course is completely false. But then you hear this story and you wonder whether this will now be used by Russian misinformation hackers and whatnot to try and push that false narrative. So it makes Canada look really bad.
Well, yes, it's ghastly. I mean, on almost every level, a geopolitical level, knowing, as you say, that this will be used and abused in the misinformation campaigns of the Russians. And I mean, just imagine the embarrassment for members of Parliament who stood there in good faith the other day, thinking they were recognizing a 98-year-old man, a veteran, someone that had dedicated their life to Ukraine. They're all standing and applauding to learn that the person was a Nazi. And again, Anthony Rota wouldn't have designed this for anything, but this is the mistake that was made. And I see the footage here of the gentleman. I mean, it's just gut twisting. It's atrocious. And so again, I come back to it. Even for someone who I think is as well respected and well thought of as Anthony Rota, I can't imagine an alternative but to resignation. Some mistakes simply must bear a consequence.
All right, can I ask you as well, just tap into your experience, within government, how this could have happened here? The Conservatives pushing this idea that, look, who was in charge of inviting people? Who was vetting the people on that list? Why was somebody not aware this was going on? No red flags were raised about this guy's record.
Yeah, we know the answer to that. The Conservatives just don't want to hear the answers, and they know they've been in government. I saw Andrew Scheer up. He was the Speaker of the House of Commons. The truth is this, Todd. When on Parliament Hill, the Speaker reigns supreme. I mean, that's the reality. The Speaker is the caretaker, the curator, the operations chief of the parliamentary precinct, as we call it, all the parliamentary buildings. And so when the Speaker says, and an event to be hosted in the chamber, presided over by the Speaker, this gentleman is from my riding, I wish to invite him and recognize him, that is going to happen, and it's not going to be checked. The idea that there's some broader conspiracy that the Prime Minister's office knew or that they failed to know and that they should have. The Speaker presides over the chamber. This man was recognized in the chamber. The Speaker has acknowledged that it was his fault alone, that he singularly invited this gentleman, recognized this gentleman, made this decision. It lies at his feet, and that's why I think he must resign. As for the suggestion that, it must in some way invariably be the Prime Minister's fault, that's just partisan politics, and frankly, it's Bush League politics.
Right, because...
So even if we remove ourselves and take a step back and say, okay, Justin, maybe it's not your fault, which, whatever. Let's just, for the sake of devil's advocacy here, let's just say maybe that wasn't the case. Anthony Rota is still the one to blame. He's the one that has taken responsibility. It's clearly mostly his fault for inviting this person, right? So you bring a +1 to an event, you're responsible for that +1, especially if they are a fucking Nazi. So Anthony Rota's only way out is to literally leave and get the hell out and, I don't know, just resign, man. Resign, be fired, whatever it is. But his time is up, and maybe it's time that we rethink who the House Speaker is. Should it be Liberal again? Nah. Should it be Conservative? Yeah, of course. Anthony Rota is historically Liberal. He's part of the Liberal cabinet, and I think that having him gone and revisiting who a House Speaker should be should be a good first step. Maybe Don Plett, conservative senator. I don't know. Would he step down from the Senate and be a House Speaker? I have no idea.
The veteran in question comes from Anthony Rota's riding of North Bay, Nipissing Timiskaming, where he is an elected MP.
Exactly. So all the more, this directly comes from the Speaker. It is a constituent of his, which makes the mistake all the more astonishing. But it provides very little room for doubt as to how this came about. I mean, the Speaker rules over the chamber. He invited this person to be recognized. I mean, I myself was at an event for President Zelensky on Friday night. There's a certain degree of, once an invitation is extended, an acknowledgement that invitation is in good standing.
Is there a way to push him out if he doesn't want to go willingly?
I believe through the standing orders, you could have an expression of non-confidence by members. I don't know off the top of my head. I apologize whether that would have to be unanimous. But I mean, if it comes to that, I think, again, Anthony Rota is not the sort of person who's going to want to subject the House or himself or his reputation to that kind of that kind of marring.
But it is gone. His reputation is gone. You have to understand that there is no coming back from this. And Anthony Rota will forever be known and remembered as the fucking House Speaker that invited a Nazi into Parliament, not just on any day, but on the day that President Zelensky was giving a speech in Parliament. He only appeared for one day. That was the same day. And so all of this Russian propaganda stuff about Ukraine is completely, run by Nazis. There's a little bit what seems to be validity of that. Why wouldn't we believe that? He fought for Ukraine with the Nazis. Come on, give me a break. Russian propaganda, or is it the truth? I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. That's where we're going to end it. Resign Anthony Rota, yay or nay? Let me know down below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give a like and subscribe if you haven't yet already, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye for now. Thanks so much for making it to the end of the video. If you want to support the channel financially, you can do so by checking out the merch shop linked right up there. Or if you want to do something for free, which is also absolutely acceptable and highly encouraged, you can subscribe right there. If you want to continue watching videos like this, you can do so by clicking or tapping right there to watch the next upcoming video. And if you want to watch a little bit of different content, but also Canadian stuff, you can do so by clicking right up there. That's my second channel, House of Canada, also known as the House of Commons Highlights. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.